Welcome back, everyone. We are at episode 7, and today we are going to talk about period recovery. We've had a lot of questions about this, particularly in relation to, I guess, the comp season finishing up. You know, a lot of women do lose their periods during a comp season, so it is kind of a hot topic at the moment. But I know there's also a lot of other women out there who don't compete, who struggle with absent periods or irregular periods. So that's what we're going to be chatting about today. To start with, we haven't recorded in 2 weeks because Loz has been down in Melbourne, so we thought we'd do a little bit of a catch-up first. So how was Melbourne, Loz?
Melbourne was hectic, but in like the best kind of way. I was saying to the girls before, I've started doing mentality coaching for a brand called STC, which is like health and training, nutrition, that kind of stuff. And I got to hang out with those guys pretty much the whole time. We did a bunch of photo shoots, like coach photo shoots, client photo shoots. The client photo shoot was really, really cool. You've done those with your girls before,
Yeah,
yeah?
I have.
And it's just really awesome to see these people who like would never have stepped in front of a camera, just like feeling themselves for the day. You know, like I love that. They also did a lift off, like a powerlifting kind of novice comp. And that was cool to be around. Have you ever been to a powerlifting comp?
Yeah, I've been to a couple.
Yeah. I've never been to them, or like, for someone who's been in the industry for so long, I've never been to a powerlifting comp or a bodybuilding show.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, I mean, it wasn't like a proper one, but it was still, I got to like load the plates on and off.
Oh, you were helping.
I was helping. I was very stressed. They have these little like lever things for like the benches.
Yeah.
I had to be shown like 5 times. I was like, please, I'm going to drop a bar on someone. But that was really cool too, because again, for the same reason, like you see these people like at the end of their lift, right? And they have like this big smile on their face. And I said to Ben, I was like, you can tell the people who have just never had anyone like cheer for them before, which is like obviously kind of sad, but now they're in this room where like every single person in the room wants them to make that lift. And even if they don't, gets around them.
Yeah, I love that about any sort of like fitness
awesome.
comp like that that's performance based. I just love how everyone kind of gets around everyone, especially the people that are struggling with it.
Yeah. I think that's one of the best parts about, you know, what we do, or like fitness in general. I think fitness can get like a bit of a bad rap sometimes. But shit like that, where you're like, it's just a bunch of people in a room who all want everyone else to succeed. Like, it's not like, oh, obviously you want to win in the real comps, but I think they still want, you know, other people to do well and feel good and feel like a part of a community. So yeah, it was awesome. Did a couple of podcasts with them as well. It's just, I really feel like I fit in with them. Like I feel like that here in Gold Coast too. That's one of the reasons that I moved. I never really felt that in Melbourne, and it's kind of funny that they're in Melbourne and I never met them when I was down there. Yeah, but just being around a bunch of people where I was like, yeah, these are my people.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, so it was really, really good. Got to spend some time with family and stuff as well in like the first half of the week. So yeah, really filled my cup, although I am exhausted.
Yeah, big few weeks for you down there.
Yeah. How's things going with you? I know you were saying that your gut protocol, you spoke about that in the first couple of episodes, and it was kind of like, yeah, like I'm not seeing as much progress as I would like, but it sounds like things are going better.
Yeah, so things are going really well. So with the gut protocol, obviously you guys know I was pretty sick a couple of weeks ago. I'm well and truly over that now, feeling like I'm back to being able to like push myself in my training again, which is awesome. I obviously missed that. But I started like a different type of gut protocol. So I moved towards like just focusing on leaky gut and building up my good bacteria in my gut again, because that's what kind of showed up when I did like a comprehensive like GI map that was like this really detailed pathology test basically that tells you exactly what's going wrong. And so that test for me showed that there was like no SIBO, no candida. It was just I had a very, very leaky gut, which basically means like the wall of your gut is like not holding on to nutrients. Like things are just kind of leaking out. That's where the term comes from. And I didn't have any good bacteria really at all in my gut. So makes a lot of sense in terms of like why my immune function is pretty impaired and like why I struggle with sleep a lot as well. So I started a new protocol for that, and it has honestly been working so well, and it's given me like so much hope and made me so excited that this is hopefully a turning point for me with all of this. I started a few different supplements. Quite a few of them I have tried before, but there's this one that I started that has just been like, I honestly think it's been a game changer for me, and it's quite an expensive supplement. Like, I don't even want to tell you guys how much I paid for a bottle of like 60 capsules because it's wild.
Yeah.
But I was at the point where I was
If
like,
it works, right?
Yeah, like
Take my money.
totally. I'm at the point now where it's like, if you told me I could give you my life savings and never be sick again, I would do it.
Yeah,
Like, that is literally where I'm at. So yeah, I started that, and it's made such a big difference to my sleep quality. Like, I used to never get more than like 40 minutes of REM sleep on like a good night. Like, often I'd only get less than 10 minutes. And now I'm getting 2 hours of REM every night. And it's actually crazy to see how much that's changed. But I'm really noticing the effects of that as well. Like, I can remember a lot more of my dreams. Like, I'm having a lot more vivid dreams, which makes sense if I'm having more REM sleep. And I'm just feeling like a lot more energized and restored, even if I don't have like 8 hours sleep, even if I have 6, because my quality of sleep is so much better. So yeah, things are going really well with that.
That's cool. I like hearing that story too, because I think for people listening, you don't always connect, oh, I'm sleeping like shit, to maybe there's something wrong with my gut.
Yeah.
So it's like hearing your story, and because, I mean, sleep problems are so common. You speak to every second person, they're like, oh yeah, I don't sleep well, or I wake up and I'm tired. I wake up every few hours, and it's just kind of, they get used to just like pushing through, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as well, like, you tried a couple of things and it didn't work, and you were like, no, I should feel better. I should feel good. Like, that's your kind of like standard for what you wanted. And so like you kept trying to make it better, and now it's like paying off.
Yeah, 100%. And the gut is like the root cause of so many things, like not just your sleep, but also like your mental health. Like, nutrient deficiencies can come from like what's going on in your gut. Like, so many things that people don't realize, like skin issues and acne, things like that. So yeah, I think as well an important message behind like what I'm kind of going through is like, do the proper pathology testing and find out like what is the issue for you, so that you can treat exactly what's going on, rather than just being like, oh, my gut stuff, so I'm going to try and take like these probiotics, if that's not actually your problem, if that makes sense. Like, your treatment needs to be really specific to your actual issue, and the only way to kind of know that is through pathology testing.
We have a gut health episode coming up in a couple of weeks too, so this is a great
Yeah.
little plug for that.
Yeah. But I think as well that pathology testing kind of leads into the topic for today, because that's something I do want to talk about regarding.
Nice segue.
Yes. Regarding getting your period back. So I guess we'll start by talking about the fact that, you know, when we're missing a period, it can come from so many different reasons in so many different places. Like, there's different areas of, I guess, shutdown that can kind of happen in your body. And getting to like the root cause of like why your period is missing is an important part in terms of actually treating it. So we'll talk about that, and we'll get into some listener questions as well, because we did have quite a few on this topic. But yeah, I guess to start with, like, when you lose your period, there's a bunch of different systems in your body that kind of contribute to you having a period. So obviously the amount of hormones that we have is really important, particularly like estrogen in itself. Estrogen is the main hormone that like builds up our endometrium lining, which is what we shed when we do have a period. So insufficient estrogen is often a cause of not having a period. But you've got to realize that insufficient estrogen can sometimes come from something else. So for example, we have this gland in our brain, basically. I'm going to try and keep this in simple terms too, so everyone can kind of understand it, that communicates with our ovaries to tell us to ovulate. So sometimes that pathway can shut down, and then that's going to stop you from having a period because you're not actually ovulating. So that's another pathway that can kind of cause your period to shut down. And that one tends to come about a lot from chronic stress. Which stress in itself is an interesting topic, because stress isn't just like you feeling stressed.
Yeah.
Like, your body can be under stress even if you feel fine. So stress can be overtraining, undereating. It can be like emotional stress, like a breakup. It can be routine stress, like traveling and like shaking up your routine. It can be chemical stress, like toxic products in your home, like toxic food you're putting in your body. Like there's so many different types of stress. It can be like your boss at work is a nightmare, like you're not getting enough sleep. Like there's so many different things that can like shut down that operation of that axis basically. And so I think it's really important that when we're talking about period recovery, you've got to understand that like why your period is missing is not necessarily the same reason as why your friend's period is missing.
Yeah, I think as well, like an important point to make is that this doesn't just affect comp prep people. That was a really terrible way to put competitors. Comp prep people. And it doesn't, I think we like always associate the, the super lean person with missing a cycle. And then you almost feel like invalidated, I guess, if you're like a normal body fat and also having like problems with your cycle. Because like I have lost mine for, not currently, but for like 10 months, I think was the longest I went without it. And like that was after quite an intensive dieting period, but I wasn't comp lean. Like I was little. And I knew that was from probably a combination of the dieting stress, lower body fat levels, but then in combination with other areas of stress in my life. And so, yeah, I just want to share that because it doesn't just affect the people who are dieting all the time or who look super lean. Like, because as you said, it doesn't have to always be from like the lower body fat levels. It can be from this high stress level.
Yeah, 100%. Like stress can happen to anyone and you don't have to be like being lean is a stress.
Yeah.
But it's not the only stress that contributes to your period shutdown. And when it comes to, I guess, losing your period from being insanely lean, like in the context of competition prep, a lot of that is just overall hormonal downregulation because when you compete, everything is getting downregulated. Like everything is kind of shutting down and slowing down. So you'll probably find at the end of like a contest prep, if you get your hormones tested, it's not just going to be estrogen that's low. Like everything is going to be low because your body is genuinely just so depleted. So it's kind of like a different type of stress that I guess has brought about that lack of period in that sort of situation.
What is the I guess like messaging in the comp prep world around losing your period? Like, is it kind of accepted as a normal thing?
Yeah, I think it is because it is so common because at the end of the day, your period is a function of body fat and not just body fat, but relative energy availability. So what I mean by that is if you're not having enough energy intake to meet your body's survival requirements, which is literally the nature of a calorie deficit, then that's going to mean some processes are going to start to shut down. And I think we spoke about that in the comp prep post-comp podcast, where basically like all your other functioning slows down when you're dieting hard and like when you're getting lean. Like it has to because it's the only way for your body to survive. And like our bodies are so smart. So they know, like, if you're super lean, you're not in a healthy position to bring a child into this world. Like, so your body's just like, nah, I'm going to turn that one off.
Yeah.
So that's basically like how that kind of happens. And, majority of competitors do lose their period. I guess it kind of comes down to like the category you're competing in. So for example, I'll talk about myself.
Yeah, I was going to say, have you lost yours?
Only once in comp prep, and that was when I did IFBB bikini last year, and I only lost it for 3 cycles.
Yep.
So I didn't lose it for long, just the tail end, and I was very lean last year, but when I was doing ICM bikini, I never lost my period, where I still hit like a good level of conditioning. Like I was quite lean for ICM bikini, but I think everyone's body is different in terms of like at what point they lose their period when it comes to, I guess, the energy availability and body fat thing. I think naturally I have always been quite a lean body type, so I think my sensitivity to it is like probably less than a lot of other people, so it takes me like quite a lot to actually lose my period. So yeah, I've only lost it once on comp prep and I've done 5 seasons. So not everyone loses it. I have clients that do and clients that don't, and some people, lose it earlier than others. Some people it takes longer to get it back than others. But at the end of the day, like it's very individualized as to where your body is like, nah, I'm going to turn this function off now.
Do you think it's associated with like how much weight a person loses? Like if a person starts leaner and then kind of like drops down to comp level body fat, does that make a difference than if someone doesn't like has more weight to lose?
Well, I don't think there's any science necessarily saying that, but what I
In your
would say is,
experience?
yeah,
Yeah.
in my experience, like based on, like I just said, for me being a naturally quite a lean body type, for me, I feel like I'm less likely to lose my period because it's more natural for me to hold this level of body fat anyway. Whereas, yeah, for someone who probably sits at a higher level of body fat, naturally it's a bit harder for them to get lean, then yeah, it probably is easier for them to lose their period, but it could also be a function of the fact they have to work a lot harder to get lean. So perhaps they're doing higher cardio, perhaps they're eating a lot less food. So perhaps, you know, they're pushing their body through a lot more physical stress, which is then kind of making it, that's why they lost their period rather than it being that they lost more weight, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, it takes more to achieve the outcome, not necessarily the outcome itself.
Yeah, so I guess it's kind of hard to answer, but it's probably one of those factors.
Yeah. Is there anything that you do when you're working with competitors to try and stop that from happening? Or is it just kind of like, we'll see what happens and address it if it does?
100%. Like it's a massive priority for me to try and keep my competitors as healthy as possible. But there's only so much control you have over it, right? Like no matter what you do as a coach. But I think the important things to kind of set yourself up to like reduce the likelihood of you losing a period or reduce the amount of time that you lose it for is firstly in the pre-comp phase, like you need to make sure your calories are at a really nice high level. You're not doing much like cardio output so that when you are overloading those things in comp prep, like reducing food, adding cardio, you hopefully don't have to go to as high levels of extremes. So therefore you're not putting as much physical stress on your body. Obviously, other things you can do are like diet breaks, which can help boost the hormones again. So a diet break is essentially just like eating at maintenance calories for like a period of generally at least 3 days to help actually like boost your hormones again. So I always implement like diet breaks in the context of contest prep.
That's hard to say.
Yeah, it is. And then also I guess like post comp, the priority, if someone has lost their period, the priority really needs to be on restoring health ASAP. So you kind of don't want to like fluff around and keep them on low calories. Like you do want to kind of take them straight to their adjusted maintenance level. So when I say adjusted maintenance, what I mean is when you've been dieting for a long time, your maintenance down regulates. We kind of spoke about that last potty.
Yeah.
So take them to like an adjusted maintenance level of calories and then try and build them up from there. Obviously reducing output as much as possible, as quickly as possible. We still want to keep them in like decent condition. You know, it's not about like putting on heaps of body fat really fast. But it's just about like, I guess, trying to improve that energy availability ratio as quickly as you can to make their body feel safe again so that they can kind of get their period back. So yeah, my goal is to generally, like with most of my clients, like have their period back within a couple of weeks. Like generally on average, I'd say it takes about 5 weeks to kind of get your period back post-show. Some people less, some people more. But my goal is to help them get it back as quickly as possible.
Yeah. When we're talking about like low body fat levels, that's obviously like we're saying it's not the only contributing factor, but it's a big one. Why is it that when we get to a lower body fat level that our cycle disappears? Like what's body fat's role in that?
Well, women have essential fat stores, so men don't have that so much. Like fat is what helps us to build reproductive hormones. So we need a certain level of body fat to be able to do that. Also, dietary fat is really important as well. And this is another factor that contributes to losing your period, is not eating enough dietary fats. And obviously in like a dieting phase, whether you're competing or you're not, a lot of the time you won't be eating enough dietary fat, or you might,
They take up too many calories.
Yeah, they do. So you might go on quite a low fat diet. Like I've seen girls come to me on diets of like 30 grams of fat a day. And like that is so not enough for our healthy hormonal function. So I think it's like a combination of body fat, but also like dietary fat intake as well that can contribute to the lack of ability to produce enough reproductive hormone.
Yeah. When we're talking about like getting your cycle back, because these protocols will be relatively similar, I believe, between like a competitor and even just someone who doesn't have a cycle and hasn't competed. What are the first things that you would do with a client to help them to get their cycle back?
I guess the first thing that you really need to focus on is that energy availability thing. Like, you're kind of pushing shit uphill if you're trying to be in a calorie deficit and get your period back. Like, it's just not conducive to what you're aiming to do, which is make your body feel safe so it can menstruate again. So I think it's really important that you take yourself out of a calorie deficit, at least at maintenance, if not a bit higher. I think it's really important to assess like what kind of training are you doing and how much are you doing, how much output as a whole. So I know one of the questions we got asked was like, do you have to like cut all cardio to get your period back? And my answer to that would be, honestly, it's a good idea to reduce it a hell of a lot. Like, you don't want to be doing HIIT cardio and things like that if you're trying to get your period back, because it is such a massive stress on your body.
Yeah. I was just wanted to jump in there on the HIIT cardio thing, because I think, especially in Gold Coast, but I think maybe across everywhere, it's kind of glorified, right? It's like the person who's doing 4 or 5 classes a week and we're doing a shit ton of burpees and all of this super, super high intensity stuff. I can't hack it. Like, I can hack it like once or twice a week, but I know that when I first got up here and I was doing it like 4 or 5 times a week, I was cooked, like genuinely cooked. Like, I would get up because I train first thing in the morning. I was doing it at like 4:30 or like 5 a.m. and I would get up and feel okay. But then afterwards, I would be sitting at my desk at like 10 a.m. going, I want to go to sleep. And I think just like an important point to make is this like male versus female thing. Like, we're different. Like, we just are. And we can't, especially when it comes to HIIT cardio, I believe, train as hard and frequently as males can. Like, I've seen males do it, 5, 6 times a week and they're fine. And running and doing this, and you're like, I want to do all of those things. You can't. It fries you. Like, and especially on the body fat level as well. It's like you can look at these, the difference in the body fat percentage of a comp male versus a comp female, 2 very different things. Because we just can't get as lean as them. We're not designed to get as lean as them. Like, the shredded abs on a female, so much harder to get for a reason. So it's like we don't have to feel like we have to keep up with them. You and I do maybe like one or 2 cardio classes a week, and I have found that I can handle that. That's a good level for me. Anything above that fries me.
Yeah, 100%. I'm exactly the same. And on that as well, doing HIIT cardio first thing in the morning, and I know we've had this conversation before, that can be even worse, because naturally in the morning, like, you're having a cortisol spike. That is literally what is helping you wake up. So your cortisol is already spiking. Then you go and do this style of training that's going to spike your cortisol through the absolute roof. Well, that's just way too high for it to spike first thing in the morning. So that's why then you come home and then you crash later and you feel like you need to sleep. And that is like a massive red flag that your body is not coping with that level of stress. But like Loz was kind of just saying, and, Loz kind of separated it into like men can handle it and women can't. But there are some women that can handle that style of training. I'd say women who have very low stress levels in other areas of their life. They're just super chilled and super cruisy and don't have much other stress going on, maybe like a low stress job or whatever.
I've also spoken to a few of them though, and a lot of them like don't have their cycles. So it's like, even if you look at them, and I'm not saying no one can do it and be healthy. I'm sure that there are, outliers. I would say that there are outliers though, not the norm.
Yeah.
You might even look at like a female who is training like that all the time and be like, oh, she seems like she can handle it. You really don't know.
Yeah.
Right. Like, just because she's doing it doesn't mean that she, has a cycle and feels good and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you don't have to sit there and be like, well, I'm sure she doesn't have it. Like, you don't know.
Yeah.
But just work out what works for you.
Yeah, definitely. And there is a big distinction between men and women in that regard, because, our body fat requirements are different. Like, men can get down to like 1% body fat
It's
and be
wild.
like fine
Yeah.
and healthy, whereas women absolutely can't do that. Like we do have essential fat stores that we can't go below. I think from there, like once you've kind of had a look at like what your training is like, what your nutrition is like the basic fundamentals as to kind of like what could be going wrong there and how could you make it a more supportive environment to kind of get your period back. The next thing that you really need to do, and this is probably an important topic that not many people realize, is like you need to get pathology testing done. Like you need to get blood work and like other testing done to find out why you're not getting your period. So there's a couple of things that we want to look at. Obviously, we want to look at like your hormone levels overall. So we want to see where your estrogen's at, your progesterone's at. We want to see where your follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone is at. We want to see where your testosterone is at. And from these sorts of tests, like we can kind of figure out like what's low, like exactly what is low and like what's high, for example, because some women will lose their period because they have polycystic ovarian syndrome. So that's a common reason to either not have a period or have really long cycles or really irregular cycles. And we can only really infer that through blood work. So that's another thing to look at, because if you have PCOS, well, that's a very different treatment to someone who just has like low estrogen and everything else is kind of normal. It's also a very different treatment to someone who's like purely just under a lot of physical stress and maybe like overtraining. So that's why it's really important to get pathology testing done to try and like figure that out. It can be a tough one because to test for like PCOS, you kind of need to do it on day 2 or 3 of your bleed because we really want to look at the ratio of follicle stimulating hormone to luteinizing hormone on those days. So if you're not getting a bleed ever, it's kind of hard to test for, but if you do quite frequent blood work, sometimes you can still pick up on it because if your ratio is off at the random time that you do test, like you can probably still tell that there is PCOS present. So yeah, that is something I would be testing. You also want to test your thyroid because even low thyroid function can be a cause of losing your period because it downregulates ovarian function as well. So we need to look at those things. Also, something that can be handy to have a look at is like your cortisol and DHEAs. So that's basically going to show, I guess, how stressed out your body is. Again, hard one to kind of test through blood work. You can do it via blood work. You need to do like a morning and a night test to kind of see your cortisol curve. You can also do it via saliva as well. So there are a couple of tests you can do. There's also this test called the Dutch test. Have you heard of that one?
No.
It's a really comprehensive, like, I think it's just saliva. It might be a combination of a few things. I haven't actually done it myself in quite a while, but that's really comprehensive and tests like a lot of like your hormones and metabolites of hormones, how your body's kind of processing them and breaking them down, and also your cortisol as well. So there's a bunch of different pathology testing that we kind of can do to, I guess, figure out like where did the problem start? Like, is your body just depleted overall, or do you have PCOS, or is like there something else going on, like low iron? Low iron can even be a cause of not having your period because like we need that iron to like bleed, you know?
Yeah.
And we lose iron when we do bleed. So that's also something that can be a contributing factor. So it's really important when you are trying to get your period back that you actually do the testing to find out why, because sometimes like just eating a bit more and exercising a bit less is just not enough.
Yeah, I'd say that sometimes it's not enough. I'd say for a lot of people, though, it's like, yeah, start with like the low-hanging fruit, right? It's like you don't have to go and get all of the tests done straight away if you've missed like a couple months. Because I think, especially for me in the past, like that would have felt quite overwhelming. And I probably just needed to eat a bit more and slow the fuck down. So it's like start there, you know, give it some time. I think this like mentality around creating safety is a really big one. That was actually something that I tried to do, and this is going to sound like left of center, but I would actually like lie down and like put my hands on my belly and almost like try and like think thoughts around it, being like, things are safe, I am safe, which sounds kind of wild, but it worked for me. I'm sure other things were contributing as well. But I think what happens is sometimes when they have their cycle is gone, you can then almost stress about not having a cycle, which is then just another, you know, vicious cycle, no pun intended. So it's like just trying to create those moments of like rest and downtime, and also just kind of coming back to you and your body, like trying to, how am I trying to say this? Just trying to like connect with your body again, like have 10, 15 minutes where you are checking in with your thoughts, where you are trying to create those like internal feelings of safety. That's what I was trying to say. I think that can help. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think it's probably a combination of two things. Like you're coming into that quieter, still state. So it's basically a form of meditation to do that, which is important to counterbalance like the stressful lifestyle that you were living at the time, and probably a lot of women lacking a period are living. You probably do need stillness. I think positive affirmations are so powerful. Like I do think
I was like, is she going to think I'm crazy?
Yeah, a bit woo-woo over there. Nah, I honestly think they are. Like, I think you can create your reality.
Yeah.
And I honestly do notice that with a lot of my period recovery clients. Like, people get so stressed out and so in their head about getting their period back. And a lot of them are like, I'm never going to get it back. I'm like, well, if you say that, it's probably true.
Yeah.
It's like anything. Like, if you say it, it will become true. So you've got to, like, try and be positive about it. But I do also think like, and it's so hard because I know so many women like feel so deflated when they're not getting their period back, and they feel like they're doing everything they can, but it does just take time for some women. Like for some women, it takes a couple months. For some women, it takes a couple years. And it's so important that you're not stressing yourself out more by putting so much pressure on it, like constantly trying to look for any sort of symptom that you might be having it. I just think it like is so counterproductive because you're just adding like this psychological level of stress that is likely a big contributor as to why you're not getting a period in the first place.
Yeah. You know, I'm big on like the expectation effect, which is kind of like what you were saying, you know, what you put out and what you expect to happen will likely happen. So it's I'm never going to get my period back. Yeah, you're probably right. But then if you go too far the other way of being like, yeah, I'm going to get it like next week, it's like you just feel like you're lying to yourself. A sentence that helped me was like, my period's going to come back when my body feels safe enough to do so. And I would just kind of like repeat that. And that was quite calming for me because it took the pressure off of like, oh, it's got to be next month or it's got to be the month after that. It was just like when things feel safe enough, like I just trust my body to know when that is.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's like if it goes on for a long time, get the testing and all of that. But I do think that just relieving the expectation pressure and just trusting that your body will figure it out when it's ready really helped me to kind of just like relax around the whole thing.
Yeah, 100%. And that is super important. I want to jump down into some of our listener questions. We've probably covered like a few of them within our chats already, but one of the questions I had was like the best supplements to take to assist in period recovery. And I wanted to flag with this one that I'm not going to sit here and reel off the supplements that you could take because it's so dependent on what your issue is. Like, is it your thyroid? Is it your low estrogen? Is it actually from low testosterone because testosterone converts into estrogen? Like, has that been the cause of depletion? Has the depletion happened? Like, is it a stress thing? Like, do we need to look at supporting your body's stress response through supplements? Like, did I mention thyroid? Is it a thyroid thing? Or is it PCOS? Because the supplementation, for example, for PCOS versus someone who has a thyroid issue, like it's different.
Yeah.
So I can't just reel off the supplements that you should take to help your period recovery. What I would recommend is like working with someone who has this understanding and can look at your pathology testing, who can then give you the right supplements for your body. So that's what I will do with a period recovery client. Like I'll always assess their pathology and give them supplements individualized to them. And I'll work it. We have an in-house naturopath as well that we work in conjunction with for more complex cases in terms of like adding supplements and what to kind of add. So that's where I would probably start with supplements. Like there's obviously basic ones that we can implement. Like, you know, zinc is really great for your hormones. Like if you are under stress, like a magnesium is like a really nice calming supplement. Like B vitamins are really essential in terms of like getting your cycle as well. Iron if you're low in it. Like there are a few basic ones, but you really want to get down to the nitty gritty of why the period's not there to answer that question in the first place.
Yeah. A question I wanted to move on to is once you've got your period back, so say you've gone through a period of time trying to get it back, how long do you wait until trying to diet again?
Yeah, I loved this question. So I would say the longer you can wait, the better.
Yeah.
You really don't want to rush it because that is just another stress on your body. So they generally say like a minimum of like 3 regular cycles is like a good sign that your period's back because, a lot of the time you get one and then the next one's
again.
like still 6 weeks
Yeah.
away. Like it doesn't always just come back like clockwork. So they say a minimum of 3 regular cycles is a good sign you're on track, but I would not be dieting after 3 regular cycles.
No.
Like
You're saying like 6 months plus,
yeah. It's hard to really put a figure on, but I think like 6 to 12 months. Like if you can just work at maintenance, like stay there, focus on like recomping at maintenance if you're like really kind of struggling, I guess, from like feeling like you do need to get leaner, but just, try and focus on other areas of your health and like how you feel rather than just how you look while you're in that state where your health is your priority. Like focus on performance in the gym and like how energetic you are, how much better you're sleeping, like how much better your libido is now that your period is back. Like focus on those sorts of things and try not to always just think about like when can I get lean again?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maintenance is great and just doesn't get the rap it deserves. I feel like even surplus is like more hyped about than maintenance. It's like I sit at maintenance. I've sat at maintenance for like a year plus before.
Yeah.
It's like you can get a lot. People think it's like doing nothing.
Yeah.
But it's not. Like you can make a lot of progress at maintenance, living life, having a couple meals out a week. And just even that where it's like if you take away the hard goal of like, because even if you go into a surplus, right, it's like I'm going to build muscle, I'm going to do this. That even in itself can like cause a stress. If you're just like, all right, I'm going to chill at maintenance for 6 months and just like train, pretty much what you and I are doing, right? Which is like train to look relatively good, feel pretty good, like not kill ourselves in the gym.
Yeah, and it's such an empowering place to sit at. Like, people think it's boring, it's not very glamorous, but honestly, like, it's so freeing to not feel like you have to change your body either way. You don't have to get leaner, you don't have to grow more muscle. Like, you can just live your life, train because you freaking love it, and just have like a really nice balance. And you become so less body focused, like, once you've spent some time in there. Like, I actually have been forgetting to weigh myself. Like I don't even think about it. And, I've gone from weighing myself every single morning in the context of like comp prep, like I always do that. And most days I just forget now because I just actually don't care. And I think it's so freeing. So, you'll probably benefit a lot psychologically from not dieting again for a while.
Yeah.
Another really good question that I wanted to answer was the minimum requirement of fat intake. Specifically how many grams per kilo of body weight. So I think this differs depending on like normal health versus period recovery.
Yeah, I was going to ask that, yeah.
Yeah, because like I said before, we do need dietary fats to produce reproductive hormones. So if you are aiming for period recovery, I would be making sure your fat intake is higher. So minimum requirement for general females is about 0.8 grams of fat per kilo of body weight. So that's kind of what we don't even really want to go below, even in like a comp prep context. Like end of comp prep, we don't really want to go below that. In terms of actual period recovery, I would be looking at least like 1.2 grams per kilo of body weight, but you could even have more, like up to like 2 grams per kilo of body weight, like would be totally fine. Like you really want to be getting like high quality fats in your diet, and you want like a broad range of fats too, like plenty of omega-3s, like they're so great for you. But also we want saturated fats too, like when we're trying to get your period back. So like don't be scared of having some saturated fat. They used to get like a really bad rap, saturated fats. I feel like less so now. But yeah, making sure you're getting a variety of different fats in terms of like saturated, unsaturated, omega-3s, all those different types of healthy fats.
Yeah. I think one of the questions was, do I have to eat 2,500 calories if I'm trying to get my period back? And I think something we touched on in I think it was the dieting success one, or maybe it was the post-comp, I can't remember, but like this notion of 2,000 was scary, right? And I think then the internet loves to throw around numbers for everyone. Like, oh, if you're trying to get your period back, you need to eat 2,500. which is, I think there's like studies and stuff on that, and that's like where that comes
Yeah,
from.
I think it's called like the Period Recovery Manual or something like that.
Yeah.
It's quite a few years old now, but I think that was what kind of like pioneered the you must eat 2,500 to get your period back.
But I think what that is missing is 2,500 isn't the number. Like what you're actually trying to do is give your body enough energy to live.
Yeah.
Now, like someone sitting in an office, like not really training, their requirement is going to be a lot less than say like you or I who are working a heap and training and stuff like that. So it's like, say if I was trying to get mine back, 2,500 might not even be enough for me. But it might be, you know, more than enough for somebody else. So like, yeah, it's a nice shiny round number, but I don't think it is across the board required. It's more just like, are you getting enough energy to meet your requirements?
100%. And you've also got to consider stuff like, you know, a girl who's 5'2" versus a girl who's 6'1", like are going to have a very different number. Like if you're 6'1", you're probably going to need like 3,000 plus. Like
tall girls can eat. I really envy them.
Yeah. So I think that it's going to come down to that. It's going to come down to how much lean muscle mass you have in your body. If you have a large amount of muscle mass, naturally you burn more calories at rest, which means that you're going to need more food to meet those energy requirements, right? So there's so many factors that go into it, and we can't just give a one number, but basically like you need to eat at least at maintenance, if not more. Like maintenance would be a very conservative way to kind of get your period back. I think small surplus is probably like where you really want to be, just to make sure that your body is like, yep, I'm safe. Like I'm getting enough food to meet my needs.
Yep. Yeah, on that kind of like eating more, there was a question on how to get over the fear of eating more, which I do think if you haven't listened to the last episode we did, that covered it really well.
Yeah, that was the dieting, how to set yourself up for dieting success one.
Yeah, we spoke all about how to build your calories up in that episode. But there is that real fear around starting to build them up. And I think my biggest recommendation would be to get someone to work with. And that's not even like a plug or anything. Like obviously you're great at what you do. But it's like I don't think you can, especially if it's like a psychological thing for you, you're scared of eating more. I work with a lot of people too on this, more in like the mindset realm than the actual like period recovery realm. But I don't think you can do it on your own, because even if I think about myself and compare it to like training and stuff, if I'm programming for myself, I'll kill myself in the gym.
Yeah.
Like even if I know that it is not the right thing, or that, you know, I would tell everyone else to do it. We're just different when it comes to ourselves. Like we just are. And I think as well, like a lot of females in this space just need someone to be like, hey, it's okay. It's okay that you to add some rice to your lunch. You're not going to gain 10 kilos from that.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest fear. People think I'll eat a little bit more and I'm just going to gain 5 kilos overnight. Like it doesn't happen like that. But you do really need someone to just hold your hand and be like, hey, I've actually done this with hundreds of women before. It's going to be okay. And also like as a coach, like I don't want to make a client like super uncomfortable in their body in this process. Like I want to look after their psychological health too, because that is part of it. So it can really help to like have someone in your corner holding your hand through that process. And, you know, I needed that when I first came out of like a disordered eating background when I was young. Like I had a coach be like, you need to eat carbs. Like you want to put on muscle, you need to eat carbs. You got to stop avoiding them. I'm like, really? Like carbs, they're so scary.
Yeah.
And, you know, I needed someone to hold my hand during that process too. Like anything that's big and scary and change for you, like just get someone to hold your hand throughout it, because if you have that expert guidance, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable with the process, and you've got someone there to reassure you every time that like fear, I guess, belief kind of starts coming back up and you want to revert to like what you were used to doing and what you were comfortable doing, which is probably restricting and is probably not helping you get your period back.
Yeah, exactly. Just getting like that support, and then also like focusing on all of the things that you gain from eating more. That's not weight. Like food freedoms, like social life, you know, feeling better mentally. I think that's one that maybe isn't spoken about as much. Like when you are under eating, you feel sad more often because you just can't like regulate your mood as good as you could if you were eating enough. So it's like I think that females especially focus on like all of the negative things that might come with slightly eating more, and we forget about everything that you will gain from that.
Yeah.
So it's like when you're doing it, even trying to have those like regular check-ins with yourself that are focused on the positive aspects. How do I feel today? You know, how are my relationships? What did I do on the weekend? You know, even little wins that like clients might share with me, like, oh, I went to my grandparents' house and I ate the bread rolls that they gave me. Like shit like that. It's like, yeah, you might lose 1% or gain 1% or 2 like body fat, which you probably need to do. But all of these little like life moments are what you gain. Like you're not, no one's going to care like how lean you were after you're gone.
Yeah, 100%. That's a good perspective. Another question that I wanted to chat about was, do you honestly believe a period of zero training altogether is needed to reduce stress and regain your period? And I don't believe, for most people, I don't believe you need to cut training completely. But I think, like we said earlier in this podcast, like you really need to assess the type of training you're doing. Things I would step away from is HIIT classes, like long cardio, like running, like long periods of cardio like that. I would step away from like CrossFit style trainings, anything that's super high intensity. And generally, we kind of just want to look at like maybe 3 to 4 like weight sessions per week. Nothing overly strenuous, especially I guess you got to look at like, is it actually coming from nervous system fatigue? Which if it is, then we probably want to reduce like heavy compound lifts, things that are going to really tax your CNS. But that's not the case for everyone. Again, it's person dependent. But yeah, you probably just want to focus on weight training where you're training in a controlled environment. You really want to listen to biofeedback. Like, are you crashing really hard after your workouts? Because if you are, they're probably a bit too much for your body at the moment. Gentle exercise like yoga, Pilates, walking, that's all good, provided you're not doing like 20K steps a day. That is too much. So that's a really important thing that people don't like overcompensate with that sort of stuff as well. But overall, you don't necessarily have to completely stop training. I know some people do it for a period, but I think for your mental health, it can help to still be training at least a bit, but you probably just need to take the focus off like killing yourself in every session. Like you need to just scale it back, like train at 85%. Like that's enough if you're trying to prioritize your health. And I know that's big and scary, because I've had to do that this year too. I've spent this whole year doing 3 weight sessions a week, not training at 100%. And I know it's scary because you like freak out about how your body's going to change, or like, you know, you're so wrapped up in like the identity you have for yourself that you train hard like every day or whatever it is. But you just really need to like accept that this is part of your journey to like scale things back.
Yeah. I think hearing that you don't have to cut it out completely will get a lot more people on board, because I think about myself, like when I didn't have mine, if someone said you have to stop training, I probably would have gone, fuck it, I'll just not have a period. Like I wouldn't have done it. I know I wouldn't have. So to hear that, like, yeah, that doesn't have to be the case, I think we'll probably get a little bit more buy-in in terms of people wanting to do and implement some of this stuff. But yeah, it's just like shifting your mindset around it, being like, yeah, you can keep doing all of those things. And one of the benefits of having trained for a period of time is it takes a lot less effort to maintain condition, muscle mass, that kind of thing, than it does to get it.
100%.
So even if you've trained for a certain amount of time and you're like really attached to it, like you don't even look that different, and you have not been training that hard for like a lot of the year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It takes a lot less, to like maintain your current physique. So it's like you could probably take the foot off the pedal for a year and probably look exactly the same this time next year and feel a lot better.
Yeah, 100%. Another question that I wanted to answer was, should I be increasing my calories more if my period still hasn't come back since comp? Now, this question comes from someone who I know competed maybe, I'm thinking might have been a month ago now, roughly. So I guess this is context dependent. Like, firstly, how many calories are you eating? I don't know. So if you're eating, say, still less than your maintenance, 100%, I would be eating more. Like, go straight to that adjusted maintenance. So I don't know, exactly what this individual's adjusted maintenance would be, because I don't coach them. But I think, you should have probably gone to around about 2,400 pretty much straight off the bat post-comp. Generally, depending on the size of a person, I'd probably take them straight to between 2,000 and 2,800 calories post-comp to where their adjusted maintenance is. So if you haven't got your period back, go there. Like, stop wasting time trying to keep your calories low. Like, get that food up and start supporting regaining your health if that is a big priority.
Sweet. Any other questions that you wanted to run through?
There was only like another one that was like, is it normal for it to just come back in dribs and drabs? And I think this is like a pretty good, actually there's 2 more questions. That's a pretty good question because like it is normal for things to be a bit irregular when they come back. Like you'll get like some spotting. Like what was your experience when yours kind of came back?
Yeah, it came back, and then I think it was maybe like 2 or 3 months, and then it kind of came back again. So it definitely wasn't like back and then back in clockwork. And I still do have times where I'll miss a cycle and stuff like that. And again, to the point of like, I'm not comp lean or anything like that. I just do a lot.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty sure, I haven't done the test or anything, but mine would be stress driven. But yeah, sometimes it's more regular and like clockwork, and then other times it is a couple of months and then it'll come back.
Yeah. You did kind of have a test though, didn't you? Didn't you get some bloods that said your cortisol was pretty high and your adrenals were a bit cooked?
Yeah, I just hadn't had any like period specific testing, I guess. I guess you could call it that, but I did.
Well, I guess we can tell that yours is probably coming at an adrenal stress level based on that, and also just the lifestyle that you live. Like
just from speaking with you.
Sometimes it's pretty obvious just through conversation and like symptoms. Like another thing is like with PCOS, a lot of the time you can tell someone's got PCOS by symptoms like acne, like extra body hair, like they put on muscle really easy. Like there's symptoms that you can kind of like infer where the problem is. Anyway, on to the last question, which I think we'll touch on, is things that a competitor will experience post-show when getting their period back. So I think, like, this is a good question because, you know, when you haven't been having a period, the PMS symptoms, like, they're a bit of a shock to you. So what you'll probably experience post-comp, like, as your period's coming back, like, you're probably going to get another increase in, like, insatiable hunger before it comes back. You're probably going to feel like you're really fluidy or you've gained weight really quickly all of a sudden, which is actually fluid, but because you're post-comp, you're like, oh my God, I just gained all this weight on my stomach. Like, what is going on? Because when you first get your period back, I feel like your PMS symptoms are so much worse.
Yeah.
Like you hold so much more fluid than like a regular cycle. You might be like a lot more moody. You might have like insomnia, like you might experience digestive downregulation. So, you know, PMS will generally like not pass our bowels as easily. So you might all of a sudden feel like you're a bit blocked up and you're really fluidy and bloated. And you're like, oh my God, what is going on? Like my body is just like gone. Like I'm losing it post-comp.
How fun's being a female?
Yeah.
It's cute, right?
Yeah. And then all of a sudden your period comes back.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, that's why.
Yeah.
It actually happened to one of my clients last week. She just got her period back about like 6 or 7 weeks post-show. And she was like, I'm so hungry. I don't know if this is ever going to stop. Like, I feel like I'm so bloated. All the weight I've gained has gone to my midsection. I'm like, are you getting any PMS symptoms other than that? Because I'm feeling like it's coming. And then like a couple of days later, she's like, hey, I just got my period. So
celebrate.
Yeah, it is a reason to celebrate post-comp. But I think it's just really important to know that like those symptoms are going to come about and it's probably going to be like it's going to screw with your head a little bit because you haven't been getting that bleed. So you don't know, oh, this is happening because I'm about to get my period. You're like, why is this happening to me?
Yeah. You don't have when it's coming regularly, you're like, oh, okay, you can look at the date and be like, that's why. Yeah. Even when mine has been like irregular, I'm like, I don't know if I'm just like tired or stressed or why am I crying? And then like 3 days later, I'm like, oh, that's right.
Yeah, I remember that with you like not that long ago. And you were like, oh my God, I'm so tired. I had to have a nap today and I never nap.
Yeah, I was like, what is going on? I felt like I had been hit by a bus and then I was just crying for no reason. And then, a day later, I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm still tough.
Explains a lot. Yeah, cool. I think we've covered everything that we really kind of needed to cover in this episode. But if anyone has any questions about period recovery, feel free to DM us. Like this is a topic we love chatting about. In particular, I love helping people with period recovery. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And if you have any friends as well that you know are kind of struggling with this, because I know it's so common nowadays in this highly stressed society that we live in, please do send this episode on to your friends too.
Yep. Thanks, guys.